Are you familiar with FBI Special Agents Kyle Seraphin?
I'm familiar with the name.
Is that yes?
I'm familiar with the name. Familiar with the name. Familiar with the name.
Let's bring in Kyle Seraphin. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called Kyle Seraphin brought it to the public. And we're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
He's the host of something that strangely is called the Kyle Seraphin Show.
Kyle Seraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome back from a weekend, and welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show for Monday, October the 28th. Yeah, we're not there yet. I feel like we're on this countdown, like we're waiting for someone to give birth to a baby, except the baby is going to be chaos, and the chaos is going to envelop this entire country. That's where I feel like we're at right now. Folks, thanks for joining us. Got a lot to get through, more than I think I could get through in a couple of hours. I went through and started sorting out all of these clips and all the sort of the things that are happening. There's an entire war kicking off in the Middle East. Looks like Israel made some moves against Iran. And all of that equals too much. It's complete overload. We're there now. We're completely saturated by this garbage to the point where every single story on the front page of all the major news cycles, all the major news sites, it's just politics and goofy politics at that. We're talking about Nazis at Madison Square Garden. Because if you've ever been to Madison Square Garden, you too can be associated with the American Nazis from the 1930s. That's the story of the day. So we're going to make this happen. We're going to get into it. Before we do, this program is brought to you by Patriot Coolers. You remember those from the 80s? They used to say this program brought to you in part by? Yeah, Patriot Coolers. They're our OG sponsor. They go back as far as anybody has since February of last year. We're so happy to be associated with them. I carry them everywhere. My family and I went to a farm, like a tourist farm out in the middle of the hill country in Texas, and we brought Patriot Coolers along with us. You can get yours as well. You can fill up a cooler in the back of your truck or in the back of your van if that's how you want to roll. You can also simply carry 40 ounces of cold liquid, keeping you hydrated because it's still 90 degrees here in Texas, America. It's ridiculous. PatriotCoolers.com. Go to their website and use promo code KYLE to save yourself 10% off. I want to thank Rose in the chat out there for making sure that we always have that listed for you. I just went ahead and pinned it in our chat. PatriotCoolers.com, promo code KYLE. Save yourself 10%. We do appreciate them a lot. You guys can also click through and find that we have the Kyle Seraphin Show collection, which means you don't have to do any graphic configurating, and you catch a little price break on there too. Outstanding stuff. All right, let's get right into it. Let's get into the nuts and the bolts and the crazies. Let's see here. How about this? Donald Trump has unveiled the most extreme argument. The closing argument for his presidency is the most extreme in the modern presidential history. I told you that CNN seems like they're tacking back to the middle. I need to caveat that from my previous statement. They have tacked back to the middle on the television, on the broadcast side. On the print side of their website, they're full nuts because they still employ the same people. This is Stephen Collinson, who is quite amusing. He said that Donald Trump anchored his bid to win a second White House term next week on a searing anti-immigrant fear at the rally at Madison Square Garden, doubling down on his promise for a massive deportation program on day one to reverse the immigrant invasion. That is in scare quotes, the immigrant invasion, because we're totally not being invaded. You have to believe that in order to take that scare quotes at its face. The ex-president's allies defended his the Democratic claims that he's a fascist and an authoritarian in the waiting. which were based partly on the warnings of ex-Chief of Staff John Kelly, the retired Marine Corps general. More on General Kelly a little bit later on in the program. Why would John Kelly be so interested in maintaining an organization that he worked for the other one? He wouldn't have anything to profit from the way that things are going with the Biden and Harris administration, would he? That wouldn't be the case. How interesting. Donald Trump claimed the United States is an occupied country, which led to a group of Democrats projecting the messages on the outside of the New York arena saying Donald Trump praised Hitler and Trump is unhinged. Do you know who seems awfully unhinged? People who keep screaming about this kind of stuff. They can't get out of their own way. They're making fools of themselves left and right. And the funny thing is the only answer is to go harder into the paint, to get more aggressive with this nonsense. That's what they want to do. They don't like they've committed to it. In poker, we call it being pot committed. That's when you have so much money in the pot that at this point, the money that's out of the pot is irrelevant. You got to ride out the hand. This is the Democrat Party's situation right now. They've got a garbage candidate. They've had a garbage candidate. Their previous candidate was garbage as well. He was exposed. They did their little coup. They swapped out in totally democratic, non-democratic fashion, never getting a vote. Kamala Harris gets in. And then now where are you? I don't see them panicking, but what I do see them doing is scrambling. And I think that's different. Panic and scramble are different. They are scrambling in order to try to make a justification if there's going to be a steal. If they're going to rip this off, and I've been talking to people that have been watching the voting machines and the election issues that have happened, the statistical anomalies or the statistical improbabilities, which even Elon Musk brought up on stage the other day at a town hall. They asked him some questions and they're like, hey, Donald Trump didn't even accept the results of 2020. And he was like, let's be real. Numerically, mathematically, there are some real problems with the way that thing was put together. And it's difficult to believe it. Statistically improbable. They are now stuck in a place where they cannot get out. And you have to make room. They're scrambling to build up enough something, whether it's a steal or otherwise. Now, there's an alternative theory that we've been kind of kicking around here. And I just noticed that Mike Benz did the same thing on Timcast, and he went on the PBD podcast and said the same thing. The same sort of thing that George Hill and I are talking about in the background. There is a possibility, because CNN has been making room for it. Donald Trump not only wins the Electoral College, but wins the popular vote. It's fairly crazy because I don't know very many people that are passionate Kamala Harris supporters. The reason why is they've only had 90 days to get excited about it. People are still excited about Donald Trump like almost a decade later. It's a durable movement. That has been proven over and over again. In fact, even NBC and MSNBC have been on air talking about it. They're like, look, this is a durable, significant movement. You're not going to bring a Republican candidate for president into New York City in 2024, like anyone other than Donald Trump doesn't pack Madison Square Garden, doesn't bring in 100,000 people or whatever it is between the waiting outside and those tacked on, that went inside. So there's always a small possibility that he actually does eke it out. That they realize, as my guest for our call-in show last week said, Sean Wisman said, the thing that the elites don't want to do is turn on the light and show the process working, that they're flipping a steal, and that this might be unstealable without exposing too much. That's a possibility too. There's a dark side of that's going to happen as well. And we'll talk about that towards the end of the show. Here's CNN debunking, fact-checking Donald Trump. They do this to all the Kamala Harris rallies too. Anyway, this is just a little taste of the one-sided coverage. I'm going somewhere with this, so you guys will see in a second.
We're watching a rally from Madison Square Garden with former President Donald Trump, where we are hearing scores of lies from the former president. He has come on stage and said a number of things that are just not true, starting with a number of things on immigration. He repeated his lies that there was no relief money for victims of the hurricanes in North Carolina and Florida and other states, because he claims that the government gave it all to migrants and that there was none left. That is patently untrue. FEMA had to set up a website to debunk that, and some people have not gone and gotten help that they needed because of those lies. He also repeated another lie that in Springfield, that thousands of immigrants were dumped in Springfield, Missouri illegally. In fact, the city website says that Haitian immigrants are there legally under the Immigration Parole Program, and that they independently chose to move there. They were not sent by any program. Again, we have heard number of lies. He also started talking about the fact that he thinks Kamala Harris would put a draft in place. It's worth noting there is no active draft in place. He has also talked about the economy, when a number of economists have pointed out that the tariffs that Trump continues to talk about and want to put into place would harm the American economy and truly harm American consumers who would see the prices of goods go up.
So there you go. Yeah, she told you right there. And you have to listen to her because she's a blonde lady on CNN. She just tells you the facts of the news. There are many, many false claims. You can actually hear her frantically searching for words to try to put this together. Or maybe she's got a BS filter and she's going, are we really doing this? It's pretty incredible stuff to watch. Here's another little piece. Again, CNN. I don't know why I got focused on CNN for a little bit, but sometimes it's fun. Trump loyalists spew racist and vulgar attacks on Harris and Democrats. Isn't that what the political process is about? Like, you go out there and claim that you have the best thing and your enemy is literally Hitler, and then they do the same thing. You know how they just keep pushing it? He's literally Hitler. So all of this stuff comes down to how do they get to the Nazi thing? Because they have to come down and make a Nazi connection, right? Some of you don't follow this stuff as much as I do, which is, I can only say I'm jealous. I'm very jealous. The fact of the matter is MSNBC and others, including Hillary Clinton previously last week, have said that because Donald Trump is going to be doing a political rally at Madison Square Garden, a place that hosts people like Pink Floyd and Billy Joel, in the same month that it hosted Hillary Clinton in April of 2016, in a place where Bill Clinton accepted the Democratic Committee's national nomination to be the presidential candidate in 1992. Because he's physically in a place where people who claim to be American Nazis have been in the past, he is in fact a Nazi. And I'm not making this up. This is 85 years, literally before Donald Trump was born. You know how much I love the word literally, except when it's appropriate. Donald Trump wasn't on the planet. Joe Biden was like 19 or 20 when this happened. I'm kidding. This is the connection to the Hitlerian types because a 1939 rally happened at Madison Square Garden, and obviously there's a throwback. Now, I've got a much uglier version. Between 1992 and 1939, there were, in fact, 53 years. 53 years passed between the rally that happened with the Nazis and the rally that nominated Bill Clinton as the presidential candidate for the DNC. 53 years, if you were to take the numbers, are 5 and 3. If you add those together, you get 8. And 8 is a stand-in for the letter H. H for Hitler. This is Frank Fugazi, Frank Figaluzzi, who goes on NBC and MSNBC all the time talking about how Trump is Hitler. Isn't it really telling that 53 years after this rally, 5, 3, 8, H, Hitler, Hillary also starts with H? Is this where we're at here? This is how dumb we are. We're living in like some of the most absurdly illogical times. This is a mainstream media with a multi-million-dollar broadcast and millions of dollars in revenue making this claim on national television.
But that jamboree happening right now, you see it there on your screen, in that place is particularly chilling. Because in 1939, more than 20,000 supporters of a different fascist leader, Adolf Hitler, packed the garden for a so-called pro-America rally. A rally where speakers voiced anti-Semitic rhetoric from a stage draped with Nazi banners. When a Jewish protester rushed the stage, the Associated Press reported, quote, instantly, A dozen or more stormtroopers set upon him, knocking him down and beating him as he held his head in his arms. Most of his clothing was torn from his body. Later, he was booked for disorderly conduct. Now, against that backdrop of history, Donald Trump, the man who has threatened to use the military against opponents he calls enemies from within, who has threatened to use the troops to quell what he says are lawless cities, and to use those troops to carry out mass deportations of immigrants, is once again turning Madison Square Garden into a staging ground for extremism.
I'm dumbfounded. Set against the backdrop of history where Donald Trump, an air-breathing mammal, much like Joseph Stalin, like Pol Pot, like many people who have committed atrocities that have also breathed air and are in fact upright mammalian creatures. There's no line there. There's no there. This is completely fabricated, but it had to come on because Hillary Clinton talked about it as well. The Daily Mirror has says that Hillary Clinton says Trump's planned speech at Madison Square Garden is a reenactment of a 1939 Nazi rally. Well, if Hillary Clinton said it, you know it's probably a lie. I'm just kidding, right? It has to be true. That's how the left works. She's one of their demigods. She's in the sphere of people that only say things that are true even when they're false. I don't know how you would believe this, but all of this plays into that sort of Saul Alinsky's things. If you just keep repeating it, if you accuse the other side of what you're interested in, then they'll have to defend it. And moreover, if you repeat the lie long enough, people start believing it's true. I've had women coming out of a Catholic church say things that I hear on the mainstream media, particularly CNN, the MSNBC types. They push this garbage out, and then people just lap it up. They internalize it, and they make it true in their own brains. And they're not interested in being skeptics. Here's Hillary Clinton saying this. She predicted this would be the problem. And then, of course, everybody picked up the banner and ran with it.
Now, one other thing that you'll see next week, Caitlin, is Trump actually reenacting the Madison Square Garden rally in 1939. I write about this in my book. President Franklin Roosevelt was appalled that neo-Nazis, fascists in America were lining up to essentially pledge their support for the kind of government that they were seeing in Germany. So I don't think we can ignore it. Now,
You know what's also weird? In the 1920s, the Ku Klux Klan actually went there. This is the thing. When you start talking about where people have been historically on the ground that you're walking on and then tying you to it because your feet are in the same literal footsteps of those who walked before you that did something terrible, are you out of your effing minds? Have you just lost all ability to touch reason? It seems like it. It seems like this is the discourse of this country. It's mind-numbing. It's also really exhausting. These people they've just lost the thread. And so here we go. This is what it does to regular people who just hear you over and over saying nonsensical, illogical, and insane things. They just go, dude, the Hitler thing. We call it Godwin's Law, which means that if you're on the internet long enough, all back and forth discussions will eventually devolve into Nazis and Hitlers. And the corollary to Godwin's Law is that if you are the party that introduces Nazis or Hitlers into the argument, you have lost. You've lost the argument because you no longer are standing on firm ground. That is not terra firma for any argument being made. And moreover, I found it quite interesting that the people that were in that rally in 1939, the Nazis that were there saluting, doing the pro-America thing that nobody was into, there were a couple things quite interesting. Number one, it very much offended FDR, who was a Democrat president. And so his answer to it was, along with some other things that had been happening, they introduced in 1938, just before this sort of sentiment was offensive to Democrats. So they created a thing that we would know as fairly fascistic. They created the House Committee on Un-American Activities, and they rooted out people that they considered to be commies and undesirables. They went after people in Hollywood. The funny thing about all of that is it's decidedly illiberal. In America, you're allowed to be a Nazi, it turns out. We don't much care for you. We don't want to associate with you, but you're allowed to be a Nazi. You're allowed to be a racist. You're allowed to be a white supremacist. You're allowed to be a black supremacist. You might even be encouraged in some places. You're allowed to be a bigoted a-hole and have whatever crappy opinions you like. The thing that Americans want, the thing that currently it seems like only conservatives are interested in, is expose that to sunlight and to daylight and to people to look at it and go, ooh, that's undesirable. I don't want to be associated with that. Therefore, I will not be. There's always going to be some people that will always kind of flock to hideous ideologies. We're a fallen people. We live in a fallen world. There are people that actively engage in Satanism. My little group chat that I've got with some friends, somebody sent a picture of a guy who has face tattoos, ear tattoos, expanded earlobes. He's got horns imprinted and surgically grafted to his skull. And these weird things in his lip and his face and his mouth, and his nose is all contorted. He has made himself a caricature of some sort of ugly, cartoonish, I don't know, just monster. You're allowed to do that in America. We don't ban you or censor you and throw you in jail because we don't like the way you look, and we don't care about the way that you speak. We may or may not want to let you around our family. We're not going to bump you off or throw you in jail or investigate you with a House committee. Godwin's Law. We played this little clip last week. I think it's telling. I think this is how you push regular people who otherwise are not involved, who are sort of like on the fence, the actual independents, the independents who are just deciding whether or not they're going to actually vote. You bump them off by doing this kind of crazy talk.
I can't. I think part of the reason why I'm being pushed towards Trump so strongly is that I find that the Democrats and the left just keep going straight to Hitler all of the time with everything. Like it, and if it's not the left pushing Hitler, it's the right pushing Stalin. So it's like we're fighting World War II every single day for every single election. So it's so exhausting. I think it just detracts from, it pushes me away from their position, and it's so hyperbolic that it makes it impossible to have good discussions. And I think it ruins the discourse.
Does anybody think it's valuable or something you want to hear from the vice president? Anybody? Raise your hand if you think this is something that's important for her to be talking about. Anybody?
It's nobody. It's women and men all on a Zoom call shaking their heads. Those were supposedly undecided voters in PA. They're pushing a button because they don't know any other button to push, and it's not going well. You know what the answer to that is, obviously? More biased news coverage. That's what we need. We need more of this, more Hillary Clinton talking about it, even though my buddy Brandon Dre found this out. He used to work for Daily Wire, and he was at Fox for a little while. I think he's an independent writer at this point. This is some stuff from the Financial Times, 2008, Madison Square Garden, New York, when Bill Clinton stepped forward to accept the Democratic Party's nomination for the presidency in 1992. You can't find any records, by the way, of Hillary Clinton doing that sort of thing, even though she was supposedly there in 2016. That's supposedly her home state at that point. Isn't that interesting? The answer is push it harder. Don't stop. This is why I keep telling you, I don't see people panicking. What I see them is scrambling. Here's a scramble. This is the Ragin' Cajun. This is James Carville. He's considered to be a Democratic strategist. He's kind of like an old, angry guy. He wears pink Marine Corps hats and other kind of gayish looking things. He's not, he was a Marine for what? He served 4 years, and now he's been like touting this. If that's the only claim to fame you have towards your masculinity, which it kind of is, kind of a weird flex there, old guy. But here he is saying, we don't cover things fairly. That's not the goal. We're supposed to get deep into the propaganda. He's just using different terms. Same lady who debunked Donald Trump, by the way.
And I am highly critical of 80% of the media coverage that tells me that I do not understand their jobs. I understand it clearly. Your job in Birmingham was not to cover Bull Connor and Martin Luther King equally. Your job after Pearl Harbor was not to cover Tojo and Franklin Roosevelt equally. And we have to understand that our existence as a constitutional republic is at severe risk here. And we have to explain it to people in plain, unambiguous, everyday language that our children are going to accept the consequences of our negligence and our fake fair coverage that people come out with. So that's what I think we should do between now and Election Day.
I totally disagree. I think that the job should be to give people information. You can slant it all you want after you want to do the editorial piece of it, but give them information and then trust your audience. It says a lot that places like CNN and MSNBC and even Fox want to spoon feed, not just, they want to slant opinion, and they don't have an interest in being balanced. They're not even going to pretend anymore, which is why our country is so divided, because so many people refuse to think on their own. They're like, why would I think? I love what Tucker Carlson says about everything. Why? You don't know Tucker Carlson. Most of you don't know him very well personally. Why would you take somebody else's opinion at face value? Most of you don't know me personally. You haven't seen the sort of decisions that I make in my private life that have not been, exposed to you. So take the information skeptically, as you are supposed to. You know who's taking it skeptically? Unexpectedly? Eric Adams. He's decidedly rattled, and he is not nearly as much in the swagger space right now. But he doesn't want to call Donald Trump a fascist. It turns out once you've had the machine turned on you, it opens your eyes in a different way. I think that if Hillary Clinton had been locked up, her tune would be very different. And she certainly did things that were worthy of prosecution and probably of prison time. I worked for the FBI when it happened. If I had done the things that Hillary Clinton had done, I would have absolutely found myself probably still behind bars. There are people who did it at the same time that either leaked or shared or accidentally captured classified information. And you know what they did? They got prosecuted, because that's what the DOJ did. But not Hillary Clinton, not the special class. The media and the DOJ have to cover it very, very gently. Eric Adams is on the wrong side of this right now, and so he's standing up and saying, you know what? In America, in New York, you've got a right to free speech. Well, hallelujah, Eric Adams. I actually probably think he thinks this anyway. This is kind of a don't screw with our freedom. We can disagree, but we can just duke it out later. That's kind of a New York attitude. I don't hate it.
Mr. Mayor, I wondered if I could ask you about any communications you've been having with the Trump campaign about this rally or otherwise, and if you believe, as others have said, that the former president is a fascist.
I have been had those terms hurled at me by some political leaders in the city, using terms like Hitler and fascist. My answer is no. I know what Hitler has done, and I know what a fascist regime looks like. I think, as I've called over and over again, that the level of conversation, I think we could all dial down the temperature. And I've heard people say that the former president should not be able to have a rally in Madison Square Garden. I strongly disagree. This is America. This is New York. And I think it's important that we allow individuals to exercise their right to get their message clear to New Yorkers.
How easy is that? He gets a chance to deliver his message to the people that want to hear it. The people that don't like it cannot like it. They can comment on it. That's called America, folks. You're allowed to have opinions we don't like. Good for him. Let's call it where it is. Is it probably because he's been indicted on the federal end? Yeah, probably. Is he probably better off under a Trump DOJ that operates fairly and doesn't go after political opponents based on the previous experience? Yeah, it probably is better for him. But he's also saying something that's true and right. So good for him. This didn't stop Waltz. By the way, Waltz apparently did this fake podcast thing where he was playing a John Madden video game with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I saw this. It's like the dumbest thing I've seen. You have to go to social media to look at it. I'm not playing it here. They're supposedly playing Madden in the background while they're having this like intricate political discussion. I've never been able to play a video game and have a complex talking point based like interview. It's totally absurd. Like there's no chance they're actually playing the game, in my opinion. So like everything else they're doing, they're fake. And that doesn't stop him, Tim Walz, from getting out there and running on his talking points. Again, Nazi rally. They just marched this thing out like it was factual. And there's a ton of people on the left that will eat this up. It's why you might as well know that they're all saying it. I'm going to give you some debunking from a Holocaust survivor after we hear from Tim Walz, who is a putz.
Donald Trump has descended into madness over the last few weeks. And I think some of you don't miss on this. Go do your Google on this. Donald Trump's got this big rally going at Madison Square Garden. There's a direct parallel to a big rally that happened in the mid-1930s at Madison Square Garden. And don't think that he doesn't know for 1 second exactly what they're doing there.
And, one other thing.
So they go into this whole thing. This is what they want to do. It was interesting. He was standing in front of something that said reproductive rights. Huh. Doesn't that go back to like the whole Planned Parenthood, their abortion take? I've got a video. I didn't size it properly, but I realized I had it, and I want to throw it up on the screen here now, just because I'm triggered by this idea of reproductive rights and freedoms. This all kind of comes down to values at the end of the day. We'll get to the Holocaust survivor in just one moment. But didn't Margaret Sanger want to get rid of all the people she didn't like? Wasn't she kind of like a eugenicist? This kind of Hitlerian, kind of disgusting and anti-human? Let's just see what she had to say about babies being born in the world being pretty awful.
I think the greatest sin in the world is bringing children into the world that have disease from their parents, that have no chance in the world to be a human being, practically. Delinquents, prisoners, all sorts of things just marked when they're born.
And where did she open up her first clinic?
It was over here in Brownsville that she opened up her first Planned Parenthood, because Brownsville was a poverty-stricken neighborhood largely comprised of immigrants, blacks, Slavs, Italians, and Jews. The very specific groups of people that Sanger defined as unfit to reproduce, those that she thought were a threat to the gene pool, to the kind of perfect and perfected human race that she was seeking to create.
To exterminate the Negro population. Margaret Sanger, founder of Planned Parenthood. Hillary Clinton did say, I admire Margaret Sanger enormously. No politician would get my vote nor my support if they would have said, I admire Margaret Sanger. The woman who said, our goal is the extermination of the Negro race. What kind of Negro would vote for a woman who would say such a thing? Got to be a dumb Negro to do that. Something wrong with you, Negro.
That's a funny way to end it. I like the organ hits, like they're at well, it's a black church, right? But it also sounds a lot like an old baseball game organ. I dig that. Yeah, people who want to exterminate folks, that's not really my cup of tea. That's not really very American. That's kind of something that we've seen other places do overseas, and we kind of fought like some big wars, and we lost a lot of people over it. A war to end Hitler. You think that the people that fought Hitler would be Democrats today? Do you think that the boys that got together and said, I'm going to enlist and I'm going to go put my life on the line for another country's freedom, for another group of people because of this evil scourge that is taking over Europe? Do you think those would be like Democrats? Gender confused? Are those the people that signed up to go fight World War II? Would any of the people that fought Nazis agree, or would they be categorized as Nazis by the current political left? Chew on that for a second. Here's a Holocaust survivor giving you his little take on what his life has seen and using Hitler as the way to frame Donald Trump. Doesn't seem to sit very well with him.
My name is Jerry Wartsky. I'm 94 years old and survivor of Auschwitz and the death marches. Adolf Hitler invaded Poland when I was 9 years old. He murdered my parents and most of our family. I know more about Hitler than Kamala will ever know in 1,000 lifetimes. For her to accuse President Trump of being like Hitler is the worst thing I've ever heard in my 75 years living in the United States. I know President Trump, and he would never say this, and Kamala Harris knows this. She owes my parents and everybody else who was murdered by Hitler an apology for repeating this lie.
Why should the Jewish people support President Trump?
Because he's a mensch. I believe that President Trump is definitely going to be good for Israel, because in everything that is done up to now was in favor. He never double-crossed anyone, and he never showed any weakness. Watching President Trump pray for the hostages at the OHL and getting to spend time with him so meaningful. He has always stood with the Jewish people and the state of Israel.
So there you go. That's actually a Trump campaign ad, which is actually pretty poignant. Now, do you have to love the Israel comments? No, you don't have to love Israel. What you have to know is that if somebody is an actual Nazi, there's no way that they're standing with Israel. There's no way they're standing with Jews. You would think. I'm going to give you a last little piece here. That's just kind of like my last little take on this. These are the supposedly the Nazis. This is the Nazi rally that Donald Trump was creating, full of, I don't know, Dominicans, and what else is in there? You've got Dominicans, you've got Puerto Ricans, you've got other goofy New Yorkers, you've got some black people. Here you go. This is the Nazi MAGA GOP rally at Madison Square Garden.
Hey, we heard that Nazis were supposed to be here. That's what Hillary Clinton said, so we out here to see. Have you seen a Nazi today?
We are the Nazi party. Yes.
Yeah.
No, I'm white girl.
I'm
the Nazi right here, yes.
Yeah.
Dominican Nazi.
Dominican Nazi. Latina Nazi. We got...
Oh, I'm the black Nazi.
Black Nazi.
The biggest blackest Nazi you ever seen in your life.
I'm the Jewish Nazi. The Jewish Nazi. And listen, I'm the cool Nazi.
I'm the white Nazi.
I'm Mr. Cool himself. We out here, baby.
He's the white Nazi.
Hey, he's the white Nazi.
White Nazi.
He's the
all united here to make Donald J. Trump the 47th president of the United States.
Stop listening to the media.
I mean, they're right. You got to stop listening to them. If you guys want to get some good coverage and good media, go to my friends over at CatholicVote.org. Get the loop. You will get an outstanding little taste of what's going on in the world. You guys will not be disappointed that you are following a news source that doesn't need to slant it. They just cover stories that are interesting, particularly if you're conservative. Faith, family, and freedom. Governing principles over at CatholicVote.org. They are targeting Kamala Harris with a new ad, which I will play for you in a minute because it's actually quite good. It's another one of their problems. Listen, if you're looking for the party of joy, isn't it the party that's willing to get called a Nazi and then get out and then make fun of people for calling them Nazis because it's so silly? It's true. That's what you're seeing. This is where joy comes in. People that are involved in a church that have faith in an afterlife tend to have a little bit more joy than those who think they're living for this world and are interested in killing off babies or mutilating those who are young and impressionable. Catholic Vote targeting some of the associations that she has. Here's a little taste of an ad. Looks like we had a little freeze frame. Here's a taste of an ad you guys should take a look at.
Why is Kamala Harris posing with the founder of an anti-Catholic hate group? They mock our faith.
The sisters are men who dress in lewd imitation of Roman Catholic nuns that intentionally mock and degrade Christians.
A drag queen comes in and kind of pulls Jesus off the cross. For Catholics, it's hard to imagine anything more offensive.
Kamala Harris doesn't care about Christians in this country.
Kamala Harris stands with they, them, not with you. Christians can't stay home November 5th.
Real simple. That's an ad that's out there. I will probably throw it up on my social media if you guys want to share that around too. The issue is like a lot of Christians think it's okay to vote for somebody that's pro-abortion. It's the opposite of your faith. Like Donald Trump's record on abortion is not, his record is actually better than his verbiage on it. His personal position aside, you can just simply look at what the Supreme Court that he nominated did, and that makes it really easy. Yeah. Is he a perfect guy? No. Has he been divorced a bunch of times? Yeah, sure. All that stuff. But at least they don't openly mock churches. This video I'm going to play you guys have heard before. You've probably never seen this side by side. This is coming from a social media account called The Right Winged Angel. We played an actual black pastor who's doing the black church routine, which is a thing. It's like a style. The worst is when you let white ladies and non-black ladies do it. And I'm just leaning more and more to Kamala Harris. She doesn't have any experience growing up in a black church, from what I can tell. I would ask her the single question, when were you baptized? She just seems like a complete fraud. And if she goes, it's for political purposes. I don't believe her. Just like you don't believe that Hillary Clinton actually ever talks like this. This is the famous, I ain't no ways tired, and joy cometh in the morning. I think joy was outside of that MAGA rally in Madison Square Garden in New York City, of all places. Here's a little cringe fest for you, especially the people who are just listening.
I don't feel no ways tired. I come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me that the road would be easy. I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me.
Weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. The path may seem hard, the work may seem heavy, but joy cometh in the morning, and church morning is on its way.
Who calls people by the name church except people that don't go to a church? Is there anything more fake, pandering, and fraudulent than whatever the heck that just was? They even sound the same. They adopted the same fake thing. They were both rotten candidates. But I still don't think they're panicking because they learned a lesson in 2016 when Hillary Clinton got edged out. Because she was about to be coronated the queen, wasn't she? Wasn't that what it's all about? And she's become kind of the butt of jokes, including jokes at MSG, Madison Square Garden. I'll wrap up with this. Then we're going to get a little bit deeper into this thing. This deliberately fake history is a real problem. And it continues to permeate the media. It also permeates people on the left's minds. They know things that are not true, to quote, to sort of paraphrase Ronald Reagan. It's not that the things that they know are false. It's that so many, what does he say? He says it's not that they don't know anything. It's that the things they know aren't so. And so we'll have a little taste of that in just a second. Just kind of a little taste of how this Nazi rally went from the inside. This is the little joke. This is pointing a little bit of a finger at the Clinton death count, which people have always looked at and said, that's sketchy. Statistically incredible, right? Do we know that they're killing people? No. Do I have any evidence? No. Did I ask my wife if the Clinton death squads were going to be coming for us when we went public with our story as a joke and then loaded up a rifle and put it next to my bed? I absolutely did. I sure did.
I don't know about you guys, but I think that Travis Kelce might be the next O.J. Simpson. Feels good in here. The other side's got a lot of crazy endorsements. Swift, Eminem, Leo DiCaprio, Beyonce. Every day the Democratic Party looks more and more like a P. Diddy party. Oh, okay. Hillary Clinton said that this is a Nazi rally here today. Can you believe that? For the most anti-war president of my entire lifetime, and she calls him Hitler. Let me remind you, Hillary, it was your husband who shot innocent people, or as he called them, interns. Yeah, Hillary, I bet you did not see that one coming. By the way, if I commit suicide in 3 weeks, I didn't. I mean, it's just obvious to me who the right candidate is. There's a guy out here dodging bullets. It is unbelievable, right?
He's got a point. They like to accuse. They like to make it up. They like to revise history. They like to make weird connections that don't make anything. They don't make any sense to anybody that has a thinking brain. If you have one question, like there's not a 1 degree of separation between a 1939 group of people who were walking around before anybody in that building was alive. But say what you want. Maybe that's why, maybe that fast and loose history is how we ended up with this kind of an interview. This is J.D. Vance, who, by the way, is an absolute boon to the campaign. He's fantastic at media handling. He's so much gentler with these people, and yet he just flips it on them effortlessly. This is a sign of a great intellect, by the way. When you're able to address things without getting emotional about it, without being overwhelmed, he simply just goes, oh. He's almost like paternalistic, the way he solves this little question about how Donald Trump caused the war. Like, hear this out. Donald Trump is the reason for the war in Ukraine. You guys know this, right? That's just completely fabricated information. And J.D. Vance flips the script on him. Here we go.
We can condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and I have, and of course the president has, but we also need to engage in some smart diplomacy if we're ever going to get out of the mess that Kamala Harris has left us in and get back to a posture of peace.
And of course, Donald Trump was president for 4 years while Russia was essentially invading Crimea. Why didn't he kick him out when he had the chance? He had 4 years.
Oh, I think that's a misunderstanding of the history, Chris. I look at that much differently.
Well, there
First
was
of all,
fighting going on.
We had Russia invade another country, a sovereign nation, during Obama. We had Russia invade a sovereign nation during Bush's term. We had Russia invade a sovereign nation during the leadership of Kamala Harris. The 1 4-year term where Russia did not launch a full-scale invasion against a neighbor was under the leadership of Donald Trump. We also have to remember, just on that point, if Donald Trump had not given Ukraine javelins, the country would not exist as an independent sovereign nation anymore. So the idea that Donald Trump wasn't sufficiently strong on Russia, I think, is belied by the actual history of the period. We can condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and I...
All right, so I've got that on a loop. It looks like, listen, that's how you do it. You're like, oh, I'm not going to get emotional. I'm just going to re-educate you on facts that you are obviously inaccurately portraying. We see this differently. What a funny and smart and charming way to say that you're an effing moron. He didn't say, like...
You went full retard, man.
He could have.
Never go full retard.
He could have advised her never to go full retard, which is what she did. But instead, he just said, oh, we see this differently. And then he educated her properly. That was on Meet the Press with NBC. So he's out there getting these things done. And that's really important. It's incredibly important, I think, at this point. Here's the thing I wanted to go back and touch on. Where did this whole Nazi narrative come out of, right? It got launched out. This was the October surprise they had. John Kelly. John Kelly was able to determine that after all this time, he was going to come forward and tell us about Donald Trump being a Nazi, that he loved Hitler. Found this stuff kind of in the archives. This is from May 3rd of 2019. Indecent and immoral. The Democrats, who now love John Kelly, by the way, attack John Kelly for joining a company that detains migrant kids. 2019, mid-Trump term. Democratic lawmakers are condemning former White House Chief of Staff John Kelly's new position on the board that operates the nation's largest facility for migrant children. It's immoral, indecent, corrupt. He drove Trump's child separation policy that inflicted trauma on thousands of kids, and now he'll get paid in profits for Caliburn, a for-profit prison reaping mega millions, locking children up. Well, that's an interesting thing to be involved in, isn't it? John Kelly was part of the board of this group that was called Caliburn International. I grabbed some stuff because I was really curious. Whenever you see these little blurbs, you go, okay, well, I got to dig a little deeper into this. Again, May 3rd, he joins the board of it. This is former chief of staff. The story goes is that he joined the board in 2019. He served previously on a board of DC Capital Partners, which was the company that owned this company, Caliburn. In early 2019, 1 out of every 6 of the 12,500 migrant kids in U.S. custody were housed at Homestead, a Florida detention center that was run by Comprehensive Services, which was then shut down by federal authorities in August amid heavy protests, blah, blah, blah. It was owned by Caliburn International. Caliburn International is a Reston-based federal contractor operating the largest child detention facility in the U.S. These are all going from 2021. And then it got weirder. So I just started digging into that. I'm like, well, what's up with Caliburn? Is he still on the board? No, he's not there anymore. But Caliburn, in true corporate fashion, who developed this brilliant brand, right? And a lot of money that they were making. You know that the one thing you want to do outside of Elon Musk and Twitter, which I don't understand, whenever you have a company and you've got a good brand and you're making a lot of money, you want to make sure you rename your company, right? Or is that just something that shell companies do to hide their illicit deeds? DC Capital Partnerships owned Caliburn International, which was a federal contracting conglomerate, until Caliburn separated into 2 different components in 2021. They became 2 different sides of the same business. One was called Acuity International. It was a consulting type thing. And the other one was called Valiance Humanitarian. And you go, well, who the hell are these people? Who's Caliburn? Who's DC Partners? DC Partners owned a group that was called the International Development Solutions, which eventually became Caliburn. It was a mercenary company that trained U.S. military and foreign armed services. Isn't it funny how it always comes back to war and exploiting human suffering? They tried to do an IPO in 2018. They were going to sell for $100 million worth of public stock, but they got a bunch of negative press in 2019, so they pulled that back. These companies were separated in 2021. Anyway, very interesting. John Kelly, the guy who went out there and leaked the Nazi story that he may or may not have made up based on the things we can tell. It sounds like he probably did. He's incentivized because he's got likely a very large financial investment in these companies that run migrant shelters. And man, 12,500 is nothing compared to what the Biden administration has brought into this country, right? Donald Trump's border policies was weak when it comes to making money compared to what these clowns are all about. So why turn off the gravy train? You got to keep it going. You got to keep it moving. How fun, huh? Last little thing, which I'm going to do a full show on, or I'll probably bring some folks on to talk about in the near future. The Health and Human Services and the Energy and Commerce Committee released this finding on what HHS did with COVID and propaganda, and it's absolutely devastating. I sent this to my mother-in-law for her to read. The amount of money that they spent, almost $1 billion worth of PR funds that the federal government was pushing absolute false claims about COVID vaccines and boosters and masks and all the other things. The claim here being made on Twitter is that if a pharmaceutical company had run that campaign, they would be fined out of existence. But because we live in a world where the federal government can do the things that it needs to, they went out there and pushed their own agenda. That's one of the biggest sins of the Biden-Harris administration, in my opinion. I think there's no other way around it. And that's kind of how you end up with some of this like insanity that they're dealing with. Their push is for things that make no sense. They pushed a vaccine that didn't save anybody. They went out and kicked a bunch of people out on ideological grounds. And then I've got a Dick Levine thing where they're trying to do their own version of Make America Healthy Again, the sort of RFK take on that Donald Trump has done. This is just a story I saw that was just indicative of the insanity that we live in 2024. This is from Friday. It's a repost by a doctor and a reporter from Good Morning America. It says breast cancer screening is critical for transgender people, but many of these transgender people are missing out. And you see a woman who is taking male hormones on there, and then I assume man who got a boob job and is sitting there, and they're both going to go get breast exams because they're in danger of getting in to trouble with breast cancer. Cisgender women have about a 13% lifetime risk of developing breast cancer, while cisgender men have less than a 1% chance, say the American Cancer Society. Both transgender men and women face real breast cancer risks, but only a third undergo regular mammographies. Okay, or mammograms, rather. They said mammography screenings. A lack of data and unclear guidelines may be part of the problems. Maybe because doctors don't know what the hell to do with, chicks with a dangle or dudes that go get a boob job. It's unclear. The claim in this is that anybody who has breast tissue has the potential for developing breast cancer. And so therefore you should go and get screened. So they do an entire thing. All of this is about normalizing insanity and craziness. It is about pushing forward the goofiness. And again, as I said, they're trying to sort of mimic the RFK thing about making America healthy. If I think about who is the healthiest person in America, what I think of is Rachel Dick Levine, a man, an ugly man, a fat, ugly man, dressed up as a disgustingly ugly old woman trying to get other weird lesbian-looking people to tell me how to eat. So please have a transgender person introduce a fat lesbian chef so that we can enjoy some knowledge drops. This is the regime that we're under right now. Anybody who's voting to continue this has a mental illness, I think.
Hi, I'm Admiral Rachel Levine, and we're here talking about food is medicine. I'm so excited to speak with Leah Pryor, executive chef and founder of the Culinary Medicine Program at the University of Vermont Medical Center. Tell us what people should know about your model and maybe how other medical centers could replicate your model to help people.
So when I think about how we can move the needle, I really like to think, how do we get that into the hands of the practitioner? So right now, what we are really focusing on is we're focusing on building curriculum for our School of Medicine, for our School of Nursing, as well as dietetics, health coaching, and basically any type of clinician or practitioner who can use this tool.
But there's a big problem with that, which is that food is not nearly as expensive as pharmaceuticals. And it's hard for us to deal with that as a medicine tactic. So we're probably not going to do it, but we're going to talk about it right now because we would. I told you guys I would get to this Mike Benz thing. Election insanity. Let's say Donald Trump pulls it off. There's some polling that says otherwise. There's some things that say that he could pull off the first, what they call the white whale, the first time since Bush, the popular and the electoral college. And a lot of you are very hopeful that will be the case. I live in a permanent state of pessimism because I don't like being disappointed. But let's say that does happen. Here's the thing that concerns those of us watching it. Based on the fact that I said they are not panicking, they are in fact scrambling. Scrambling means you are trying to get yourself a response. This is Mike Benz, who's a friend of our program, really sharp guy. He's a good chess player and 3D thinker. He sits and machinates on the possibilities. And this is something that we have also independently thought about behind the scenes. Share it with you guys in somebody else's words, because why not?
So is your sense that on, say, January 20th, if Trump does win clearly in the election, is your sense that on January 20th, Trump will be inaugurated or no?
This period between November 5th and January 6th is going to be extremely intense. If Trump wins, my sense is that you will see street paramilitary, left-wing / never Trump, right even potentially. You're going to see this sort of summer 2020 style riot force start to break out on the streets. The media is going to portray them as pro-democracy groups who are protesting the illegitimacy of the Trump Electoral College victory. So that's going to shut down the country. It's going to start terrorizing people. It's going to start preventing people from being able to communicate. You're going to see pressure put on the social media companies, extreme pressure put on by the Justice Department, put on by the advertiser networks. You're going to see this crisis response. It's going to feel like this country is, it's going to feel like the day after January 6th for 2 months if Trump does indeed win the Electoral College, in order for them to prime the pump for their extraordinary actions on January 6th.
I'm just saying, I'm not just operating out here to be a pessimist or to blackpill anybody. I don't want to do that at all. In fact, I think that being hopeful is the right way. I just don't have a lot of hope in the national aspect of our election. And neither does Mike Benz, who sits there and watches this stuff all day long. This is what we're talking about. Even if he wins, America is going to experience unrest. There's no doubt in my mind. Make sure that you guys are prepared. Make sure that you're trained. You already saw they got a dry run in 2020 and it just rolled. They've rolled this stuff out. These people are nuts and they're true believers. So trotting out the fascist narrative gets all of the Antifa idiots on board with what you're about, because you got to stop a fascist. You've got to stop literally Hitler. You must. And you are now on the side of righteousness, which is what is being framed. At the very minimum, they are framing opposition to Donald Trump as being morally righteous. And again, what should you do to stop Nazis? Invade? Take over? Do the same things that we did? One would think. So that's kind of an interesting little thing just to throw in your pipe. I want you guys to chew on it. Just be aware. These are the thoughts that should be happening in your mind, and you shore that up by dealing with your neighbors, with your friends, connecting with your church, finding people that disagree with you and making sure they know that you're a human being and you think of them as a human being as well. All these things are very important. Let's do that. Before we wrap up the show here, say thanks to our buddies over at Mad Hat Jerky, which I was carrying with me when I was walking around on this hobby farm thing this weekend. My son ate all my jerky, which is a thing he does all the time. Matt Hat Jerky. It's MATTHA1T jerky.com/Kyle. Use promo code KYLE. Save yourself 20% when you check out over there. You guys should get yourself squared away with an outstanding snack. And if you set yourself up with I might just have to do this. I might just have to get on a recurring subscription. You can have it delivered and you'll get 20% off for all future orders as well at matthatjerky.com/Kyle. My favorites too, they continue to be my favorites. My wife's going to try some other ones, by the way. My favorites are roasted garlic, which is a little bit more peppery, and then also the black truffle, which is very, very rich umami. And my son, who is 3, destroys it, absolutely destroys it. If I want him to eat something that's meat, I tell him it's jerky. He'll hear this one day and know that I was sort of lying to him. But it was for his own good. It's a high protein snack, so there's nothing wrong with going that route. Okay, I got a little bit more for you. Let me do a palate cleanse, and then I'm going to actually end with a very poignant ad. These are some pretty good ads that are being put out by the Trump campaign. Mostly, it's interesting because it's stories about Kamala Harris that you might not hear anywhere else. So we're going to end with that. But before we do it, let's go ahead and do our palate cleanse over here. Just kind of a little, take a deep breath, feel okay. The world is still decent. Again, human beings have always dealt with times of turmoil. This is a little sort of parable, if you will, about the dog and the monkey and the cow and the man.
God created the dog and said, "Sit all day by the door of your house and bark at anyone who comes in or walks past. For this, I will give you a lifespan of 20 years. The dog said, "That's a long time to be barking. How about only 10 years and I'll give you back the other 10? God agreed. Then God created the monkey and said, "Do tricks and make people laugh. For this, I'll give you a 20-year lifespan." The monkey said, "Tricks for 20 years. How about I give you back 10 like the dog did?" God agreed. Thereafter God created the cow and said, "You must go into the field with the farmer every day, have calves and give milk to support the farmer's family. For this I will give you a lifespan of 60 years. The cow said, "That's kind of a tough life for 60 years. How about 20 and I'll give back the other 40? And God agreed again. Then God created man and said, "Eat, sleep, play, marry and enjoy your life. For this I'll give you 20 years. But man said, "Only 20 years. Could you possibly give me my 20, the 40 the cow gave back, the 10 the monkey gave back, and the 10 the dog gave back? That makes 80, okay?" "Okay," said God, "you asked for it. So that is why for our first 20 years we eat, sleep, play, and enjoy ourselves. For the next 40 years we slave in the sun to support our family. For the next 10 years we do monkey tricks to entertain the grandchildren. And for the last 10 years we sit on the front porch and bark at everyone. Life has now been explained to you."
Kind of charming. I do like about the last 10 years. I've been barking on the porch for pretty much my whole life anytime someone comes near. So some of us have a little bit different distribution, but a cute little story. And sometimes we just have to take a little breath and remember that. If you guys are in the live chat, we really appreciate you being there in the morning. All of you that listen to the show, we appreciate you. If you're in the live chat, make sure that you've hit the thumbs up. Make sure you've liked this video wherever you're watching it. We're not on YouTube anymore watching it. So if you're on some of the social medias, you can always retweet. You can reshare it. You can repost it if you are so inclined. If there was something here that moved you, or if there was information that you think should go somewhere, make sure you guys do that. We do appreciate it. You can also join us over on Locals at KyleSeraphin.com. KyleSeraphin.com to interact with us on the Locals channel. It's me and the great people from the community there, some behind the paywall, some not, a little bit of everything. And I always post all of the receipts from whatever I've been looking at. I will share with you guys the articles so you make sure that you can have access to those. And I got a 5-star review for you. Actually, what I have is just a review from Spotify that's kind of funny, and then someone who doesn't like the program, which I think is also funny. UK, riots or civil war inevitable? This was from episode 363. That was the talk of the time. Priscilla came on and said, "I agree with you. Women shouldn't be in politics. We're way too emotional." That's funny. And then apparently a woman who didn't like it said, "This man is so far behind what's happening, I couldn't even finish a single episode." Look around a little. You'll find much better. You'll find much better than the Kyle Seraphin Show. Some of you may agree, and we may never hear from you again. But for those of you that stick around, thanks so much for doing so. We do appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you guys again tomorrow on Tuesday at 0930 Eastern for the live show. We'll find you here on Apple, on Spotify, on iHeartRadio, wherever you're listening. And we do appreciate you that. Remember, you can find the video now on Spotify if you're having issues with our Rumble channel or any of the other videos. All right, God bless you. I'll see you real soon. After the outro rolls, you will hear this Donald Trump ad that I think is quite good, talking about men don't have a problem with women being in politics. We just have a problem with Kamala Harris. I think that's pretty true.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.
Dear Kamala Harris, let's get one thing crystal clear. The vast majority of American men have no issue with electing a female president. Our issue lies solely with you. You were second in charge of California for 13 years.
As California's Attorney General, Harris promoted enforcement of a law that allowed prosecutors to seek jail time for parents of truant kids.
As a prosecutor and law enforcement, I have a huge stick. So I decided I was going to start prosecuting parents for truancy.
I thought that was crazy. I was like, how can you lock parents up?
If you don't go to school, Kamala's going to put you and me in jail. Yes, we achieved intended effect.
I opened the door and I see at least 7 or 8 cops like wanted to arrest me. As a matter of fact, they did.
And frankly, you know the prosecutors in my office who volunteered to do this? My homicide prosecutors, my gang prosecutors. And they went over there and I said, when you go over there, look really mean.
She had me arrested and prosecuted because my handicapped daughter was sick in the hospital and had missed some days of school.
I learned that with the swipe of my pen, I could charge someone with the lowest level offense. That person could be arrested. They could lose time from work and their family maybe lose their job. They'd have to come out of their own pocket to help hire a lawyer. They'd lose standing in their community.
I lost my job and couldn't pay rent, and we got evicted.
Weeks later, I could dismiss the charges, but their life would forever be changed.
I became homeless. We had to move into a motel.
All because of the swipe of my pen.
I don't agree what Kamala Harris did to my mom, and I don't agree with what she's done to other parents as well.
You were second in charge of the United States for 4 years.
If anything, would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
Inflation is hitting the highest level in 39 years. A record high number of illegal crossings.
Crime's been surging across the nation.
Huge spikes in homicides.
Could we be heading toward World War III?
After 17 years of failed leadership, you are now asking us to trust you as first in charge of our country.
I am concerned and focused on big issues. Elementary and middle school truancy is actually a big issue. If we're trying to save the state money.
Because of truancy, California public schools lose $1.4 billion a year in funding.
I want money.
My message to all Americans, do not trust Kamala Harris.
As men and protectors of women and children, you are simply a risk we are not willing to take.
Paid for by Maha Alliance and not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.